Kakadosh Boker Or Bekiim Bahalacha due to day 12. We're talking about page 44, right? We are on Halacha Mem Gimel. The Halacha states as follows. We're talking about right now the pasuk of Vishahat Oto. Yesterday we spoke about the importance of reading Parashat Akedah, and today we're going to continue with Vishahat Oto. So immediately following Parashat Akedah Yitzchak, one should say the pasukim of Vishahat Oto L'Erech HaMizbeach. This is the tradition of Sephardic congregation based on Midrash. Midrash says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu once said, right? So he says, I bring heaven and earth to testify that whenever someone, a Jew, non-Jew, recites the pasuk of Vishahat Oto, I am reminded of Akedat Yitzchak. And then after reciting this, one should recite the prayer of Ribono Shel Olam Kemo Shekavash Avraham Avinu Rachamav, right? And the verse of Vishahat Oto is recited a second time just before the Mishnah of Ezehu Mekoma. So says the number 40. Maran ruled that one should say the pasuk of Vishahat Oto together with the Korbanot. The Bet Yosef explained that this is based upon the Midrash, saying that when Avraham Avinu bound his son Yitzchak to the altar, right, he came in preparation for slaughtering him. Hashem instituted, right, the future mitzvah of the two lambs, meaning the Korbanot Tamid, right, to the Tamid Shachar Tamid Shemer. So one in the morning, one in the afternoon. When offering the morning lamb, one in reciting this pasuk of Vishahat Oto, Hashem is reminding Akedat Yitzchak. The Midrash interprets the word tzafona as if it was safuna, which means it's safun. What's safun? Hidden, right? Hidden away. And God has the ashes of Yitzchak hidden away where he can see them. Okay, so he peeks at them in order to ward off all evil from our people. Okay, and that's why it's safona, it's really tzafun. Right? It's not really tzafon in the north, it's really tzafun, it's hidden. So after saying the passage of Akedat Yitzchak, the Rav Chida said that one should say this pasuk immediately after Akedat Yitzchak to add a prayer that Hashem should remember this act as if his ashes is in his presence, so that he will see them and cancel any evil decrees. The Midrash says this prayer is printed in our Sidurim. The Kaf HaChaim pointed out that this added prayer does not appear in the books of Rav Shalom Sharabi, and the custom of Yeshiva Betel is not to say this pasukim. Right? He says Rav Yosef Chaim the Ben Ish Chai, however, testified that the custom of Baghdad was to say it, and the custom must not be changed. Indeed, the common custom in our times is to recite both the pasuk and the prayer. So therefore, you do have it that sometimes, even if it's not brought down in the big Mikubalim, sometimes you have different minagim, and therefore, obviously, according to the minagim, what do you have? Okay. What? Before Ezeu Mekoman. So it says over like this. Maran of the Shulchan Aruch wrote simply that this pasuk should be said with the Korbanot. Okay, but he did not specify whether to say it before or after. So therefore, the Yarab and the Shnei Luchot Rabbi, the Brit, they both cited the Totzaot Chaim that it should be recited before the Korbanot. Our custom nowadays is not to recite the passages of the Korbanot, right? Meaning the Torah passage describing the offerings of the various types of Korbanot. Instead, we recite the chapter of Mishnah beginning as Umikman. Therefore, the proper place for reciting this pasuk is just before reciting this chapter. Furthermore, it only makes sense to recite the pasuk, the writ of the Torah, before the Mishnah, which is the oral Torah. Following the passage of Korbanot Tamid, the Pri Megadim, right, prescribed reciting the pasuk immediately following the Korbanot Tamid, and this is based, right? He says over here on the Midrash cited above. So he says to be offered twice a day. Although, right, he says the poskim cited above ruled that we are to recite it before the Korban. It does not apply in this case. Reciting this pasuk in itself, right, is tantamount to offering a Korban, and we taught that nor Korban may be offered before the Korbanot Tamid. Therefore, we should postpone reciting this pasuk until after the Korbanot Tamid, meaning the Tamid Shel Shachar is always the first Korban in the day. So ever since it's the first Korban in the day, that's the first thing that should be done. So you shouldn't come and start doing another Korban beforehand. So this presents with a problem, right? Why? The Sephardic Jews, we recite the pasuk immediately following Akedat Yitzchak. And that's way before the Korban Tamid. So if you're going to tell me that that we just brought a Korban and it's Akedato Shel Yitzchak, but we don't do the Korban Tamid until later on. So what's going on? So perhaps that is permissible since it is so far removed from the pasuk of the pasukim of the Tamid. Besides, right, we do not do it as a substitute for a Korban. Rather, we do it to complement and enhance our plea that Hashem should remember the merit of Akedat Yitzchak. So it's not actually mamash like a Korban. Just trying to remind Hakadosh Baruch Hu of Akedat Yitzchak. Sephardic Jews do not have the practice of reciting this pasuk together with the pasukim of Korbanot Tamid. We recite later on, just before the chapter of Ezu Mikoman. But our intention is that it should refer to the passage of Korbanot Tamid, just like we said earlier. Ashkenazic Jews recite the pasuk immediately after the Korbanot Tamid, as prescribed by the Pri Megadim. Okay, there's a little bit more. We're just going to do the preface of Korbanot. 47. Okay, the power of reciting Korbanot. Maran cited the Tur. The Tur states that it is commendable to recite the Torah passage to describe the Korbanot La, Incha, Shalamim, Chatat, and Hasham every single day. The Bet Yosef, he cites the Gemara. The Gemara says the source of this practice of Yaakov Bar Acha, said in the name of Ravasi, if it were not for the merit of the Ma'amadot, that's the people that they're mamash, they're learning all the day, the Korbanot and everything, so they would actually cease to exist. When Hashem promised land of Israel to Abraham's descendants, Abraham Avinu said, okay, but what happens if they're going to sin? Now you're going to what? You're going to annihilate them. What's going to happen? We learned this in Ta'anit. Do you remember? So he says, right, and also Megillah. So he says over here, he says, what's going to happen? He says, well, you're going to bring the flood. Eh? He says, right, don't worry about it. You bring me three calves, 3 goats, which means you bring me the sacrifices. And that's it. Abraham said, okay, that's only going to be good. That's only going to be good if there's going to be Bet HaMikdash. What happens if there's no Bet HaMikdash? So he answered, right? He says, when your descendants will recite these psukim, it's ki'ilu, right? It's ki'ilu that they said they offered it, and therefore I'm going to forgive them. Maran also cites another passage. The Gemara in Menachot says, Yitzchak said, why does the Torah use the terminology that this is the Torah? Zot Torah Chatat. What Torah Chatat? Or Zet Torah, right? What is Torah Hasham? It's to teach us, anyone who studies the Torah that about the Chatat, is if he brought the Chatat. Anybody that studies the package of the Olah, is if he brought an Olah. The Zohar HaKadosh says, right, it's quoted also by the Elmaleh, that when Hashem comes and he taught the mitzvot to the Korbanot to Moshe Rabbeinu, he complained that it would only be effective as long as Bnei Yisrael are in their land. But what would happen after they're going to be exiled? Hashem answered, as long as they study Torah, which is the halachot pertaining to the Korbanot, he's going to forgive their sins. And the Sefer Charadim taught that since Hashem refers to the people of Israel as his children, that we are considered banim to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we must honor him as our father. Just as the mitzvah of honoring our parents is going to be, for example, to serve them food, so you have to serve them food. We accomplish this by Korbanot. But the Zohar HaKadosh comes and he says, right, and by the way, you could actually continue that just like the honoring of the father also applies after death, so too it applies even after the Bet HaMikdash. There's no Korbanot, it's like the Kaddish afterwards, which is going to be afterwards. The Zohar HaKadosh says, Rabbi Pinchas says, I once was traveling and I met Rabbi Eliyahu Navi. I asked him, teach me something that would be beneficial for everyone. He replied, Hashem made a treaty with all the prosecuting angels whose nature is to present people's sins in the heaven and accuse them, that as long as the people recite the paths of Korbanot in the manner that they were taught to Moshe Rabbeinu and concentrate on their meaning, those angels must report only good things about the people. So mamash, that means you have like mamash, that's it. No more prosecuting angels, only defendants. Right? Okay, fine. What about invoking the merit of the Korbanot long ago? So Rashi states that after the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, the merit of the Korbanot offered will still will protect us. Right? Rav Moshe Chaim Leiter, he comes and he pointed out this seems to contradict the Gemara's teaching that Hashem promised Abraham Avinu that after Bet HaMikdash is destroyed, we can substitute the merit with the Korbanot. According to this Rashi, that should not be necessary since the previous Korbanot still provide atonement automatically. Meaning, according to Rashi, it comes out that the second that you did the Korbanot, then it continued even until now. Meaning that merit of those Korbanot are still continuing until today. You don't have to say Korbanot today for that. So it's obviously against what we just said. Chaim Falache comes and he says, no. The Rashi's teaching is that by saying the Korbanot, we invoke the merit of the Korbanot offered in the past. So this process, we are protected from all evil decrees. Thus, the Korbanot were actually offered in the past, continue to protect us now, but only as long as we're actually saying the Korbanot. Only as long as we're actually saying it. And that, in essence, is what we're supposed to be doing.